Hello and welcome to my first video review. Today I'm reviewing Sword Art Online, an anime set in a cruel and unforgiving digital world full of romance, danger, and
magical fairy incest. Great.
The story takes place in the year 2022, where virtual reality video games are now immensely popular. The newest MMO to hit the market is Sword Art Online. This is the most hyped game of the year. Players are rushing to log on to the servers, but soon they find out that they can't log out. This is when the game's creator informs them that if they wish to be free, they must reach the 100th floor of the game's tower and defeat the final boss. However, if their avatars die in-game, they also die in real life. While not the most groundbreaking premise, it does a great job of immersing you in the setting. You get a feel for the general atmosphere of despair that the players have, and follow our protagonist as he realizes just how deadly and dark this world can be. Unfortunately, after the third episode, all of this gets thrown out the window, when the mood becomes even more unstable than an Evangelion character. It tries to sell itself as this gritty, epic adventure where death is a real concern for every character, but quickly forgets about this and tries to turn the show into a fucking harem. This is all about the first half, by the way. When you get to the second arc, the plot loses any kind of dramatic tension and heads in a more ridiculous direction. When you get down to it, the plot is just lazy. It relies on a lot of Deus Ex Machina moments, the pacing is horrible due to constant time skips, and it feels like they were in a rush to finish the first arc as fast as possible, and then realized, oh shit, we have to do more of this? Our protagonist is this shut-in beta tester named Kirito, that's too busy humming to himself Linkin Park lyrics to notice that every single girl he meets wants his dick. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just that I have a hard time empathizing with him. There's only one real moment in the series where you can see why he would be so sad. The rest of the time, he's just being a bitch. They tell you that he's this antisocial loner, but they never really show you any moments where this is true. In fact, he's quite the social butterfly. Fairy. Okay, whatever. My real problem with him is that he doesn't have any distinct personality traits. He's so bland and uninspired, the only thing you get out of it is that he's supposed to be antisocial, but you never really see it. In fact, you never see much of him. You only get glimpses at what happened during the game, but they never really show you any important moments in his character arc. Well, what I assume is his character arc, because he jumps from being a lonely geek to pretty much a badass in 2 episodes. Aside from Kirito, we also have Asuna, the female lead. She's this very important character that's really strong and just wants to go back to her old life. Well, that's what the show wants you to believe. In actuality, she's just this generic redhead tsundere that doesn't really do anything but be all lovey-dovey with Kirito. She's introduced as a mysterious badass that would somehow contrast Kirito's lone wolf syndrome, but it falls off in the second episode she appears in. She doesn't really have any distinct personality. All she does is pretend to be mad at Kirito or monologue why Kirito is her one true love for the 100th time. Oh, and she cooks. That is until she becomes a freaking damsel in distress. It's probably the most disappointing aspect of SAO. She could have been this strong female character, in an industry and genre where this is rare, but they turn her into a useless girl that can't really do anything without Kirito. In fact, I don't think there's a single character in the series who can do anything on their own. Everything revolves around Kirito, and if something is impossible for him, don't worry. He can bend the laws of physics with sheer will and make the system work for him. This is another problem I have with him. He never loses. The best part of the series were when he wasn't automatically winning everything without much effort. In the first 3 episodes, you see him at his lowest, and coincidentally, this is probably the best part of the show. I'd go deeper, but there really isn't anything left to say about them. This is the only characterization I got from them. They literally stay the same for the whole 25 episodes, with only a tiny bit of development. Every other side character is only given a little bit of screen time, so while likable and enjoyable, you only see them a little bit in the first half, and then they're completely forgotten about in the second half, replaced with a whole new supporting cast. I still don't understand why they had to derail the plot so much to introduce these characters, only to forget about them later on. This probably sums up all of SAO's problems. It digs around too much. It fools you into believing it'll be an action-packed epic with the goal of conquering Aincrad. Then it does the bait and switch, becoming really dark. I like this. It was brilliant. But then it becomes a fucking slice of life with no sense of progression whatsoever, sprinkled with a couple of action scenes to keep your interest. Now, some people might argue that this isn't really an action show and that it's actually a romance, and that I'm missing the point. To that I say, really? You really think this is a romance anime? Okay, I'm sorry if I insult anyone by saying this, but you have to be fucking delusional if you think this is what love is. It's like the author has never met a girl in his life and wrote what he thought was a close approximation of what a real relationship is like. Kirito and Asuna have no reason to love one another. They barely know each other, and all of a sudden they're in a really committed relationship. Not only that, but they adopt a fucking little girl. Do you know how creepy it is that they start a family with this girl they just found wandering in the woods? You might call that love, but I call that kidnapping. And I'm pretty sure the legal system agrees with me. Could you imagine how screwed in the head this kid could have ended up? And let me remind you, these are two teenagers acting like they're a 30-year-old married couple. It's unsettling watching them turn into this after only a week of being together, and makes me wonder just what the hell the writer was thinking when he wrote this. If you look at it from this point of view, Asuna is a really fucked up character. She falls head over heels over some guy she doesn't know, marries him, imprints on a little girl, and becomes a fucking housewife, all out of some deep-seated need to have a family. I mean, they imply that her family isn't really the best. But talk about overcompensating. This is Evangelion levels of fucked up. Hell, I think if Asuka saw this, she'd be like, "Hey girl, slow the fuck down." Of course, I can't talk about the romance without addressing the elephant in the room. Yeah, the incest. I can't believe I'm about to defend incest on the internet, but I have to say it. It didn't really bother me. In fact, Suguha is in my opinion the most developed character in the show. Ain't that some shit, huh? I'm as surprised as you are. But the bar is set so low that saying she's the best character in SAO is like saying I have the biggest dick in a micro-penis support group. It isn't that much to brag about. Anyway, the reason I enjoyed her character was because she actually goes through an arc. Think about it. She's this 15-year-old girl that recently gained some personality, and after having a shoddy relationship with her brother, thinking he was gone forever, he suddenly returns and is sweet, gentle, and compassionate with her. A completely different person from what she remembers. Then she finds out that she's not really related to him, and her whole world is turned upside down. She isn't familiar with the feeling she currently has, so she just assumes that it must be love. After resigning herself to the fact that she'll never be with Kirito, she meets this amazing, and please understand I'm speaking in the context of the show, guy in the game, falls in love with him, and then finds out that it was him. I mean, come on! Give her a break! In the end, she's just this confused girl dealing with all this shit that's happening to her, and she comes out of it a stronger and more mature person. It actually made me feel bad about her, even if it was incest. Hey, at least it made more sense than Mrs. 2 Years' worth of cooking. In the end, it all boils down to what this show is really about. Wish fulfillment. It pains me to say this, but SAO is just the twilight of anime. Kirito is the most overpowered, wise, and bland character in the whole show, and the whole world revolves around him. He never loses and he has no flaws. He doesn't really go through a struggle. This makes it very easy to live vicariously through him. You see, for all the shit I've given SAO, this show is to me like that insane girl you went out with but can't stand. You know it's a bad idea to sleep with her, but you still do it. I fell for the trap of getting wrapped up in this world. I couldn't stop thinking that I wanted something like what Kirito and Asuna had, but it wasn't until a week later that I realized just how freaking unrealistic and shallow it was. Listen, I'm a geek. I play video games, I watch anime, and I do a whole bunch of stuff that would be labeled as nerdy. So I could tell that the show really kept its target audience in mind when creating everything. The pandering is so good that even when you know it's sucking your metaphorical dick, you still get caught up in the story. It was really interesting to look at some of the psychology behind gamers and how they would adapt to living in an online world. How trying to escape from your flaws in an online world is pointless since you can't really run away from being a coward or weakling. You will always have social anxiety no matter where you run to unless you take a look at yourself and deal with it head on. The real world isn't what's stopping you from doing great things. You are. These are points that SAO tries to make throughout the whole series, and they're great. I love them. But how can you expect me to take that seriously if you have a main character that never overcomes anything and is only really good at playing video games? It's like it's telling you to do one thing, but shows you another. And then you end up with a mixed message and don't really know what to make of the show. Part of the reason it's so easy to lose yourself in SAO is because of the online world they created. If you're familiar with MMOs, then it really is a dream come true. It's very beautiful at times, and the way the game mechanics are integrated into the daily life is very clever. You never have a problem inserting yourself in the game because, in a way, it makes sense how it works. I also have to say that the animation in the show is stunning. The fight scenes are very well choreographed, and just seeing some of the sights this MMO has to offer makes you wish you were there. The blend of colors and movement is something that I always love when done right, and this is something SAO doesn't disappoint in. The music score is also amazing. The songs have a real epic feel behind them during a boss battle, but it also transforms into a lighthearted medieval piece whenever the show slows down. I also can't forget about the openings. Both of them are great songs, and they are some of my favorite from recent times. On the voice acting side of things, I never tend to recommend one dub over the other because it always boils down to personal preference, unless it affects the show in a significant way. In the English dub of this anime, Kirito is a bit of a pretentious asshole, and the delivery of some scenes is sometimes better in Japanese. I feel like if I had seen only the show in English, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, so I can't recommend the English dub in good faith. All in all, when I look at Sword Art Online, all I see is wasted potential. It started off great, but lost track of what it set out to do with horrible pacing and time skips. The show could have been a real game changer if it stuck with the tone and focus it had in the first 3 episodes, but it basically devolved into Kirito dicking around in an MMO collecting a harem like it's a fetch quest. What's worse is that it tried to take itself too seriously without ever really having any serious moments to back it up. If it hadn't been like that, then maybe I wouldn't have been so harsh on it. Half of me loves it and sees it as a unique new world with great premise, beautiful action, and amazing music. But the other half sees it as an uninspired mess with horrible pacing, cookie-cutter characters, and the biggest mental masturbation device out there for lonely geeks who think that by being great at video games, they'll find that epic adventure they've always craved for. After all that, I still recommend that you watch SAO. If you don't think much about it, it's a very entertaining anime. It's a grand adventure with some memorable moments that are just plain fun. And at the end of the day, that's enough reason to watch a show. It just doesn't have as much substance as it pretends to have. So if you're one of those types of people who enjoy more meaningful stories, then maybe you won't be able to suspend your disbelief and end up hating it like a lot of other people. From a critic's point of view, the show leaves a lot to be desired, but that didn't stop me from enjoying it. If the premise interests you, Axel World is another anime written by the same author, and it's way better than Sword Art Online in some aspects. With all that in mind, I give Sword Art Online a 7 out of 10. It's good, but not spectacular or amazing. With that, I leave. Thank you for watching my first video review, and leave a comment. All I want to do is spark discussion among the community. So if you have something to say, please, say it. Thanks!